Hello, everybody. You might notice that I'm speaking into a microphone and yet you don't appear to hear any sound reinforcement. That's because this microphone is broadcasting onto the internet, because this session is being broadcast to people all around the world. I think we've got some people in Chicago, is that right? So, yeah, welcome to you in Chicago. And they're here with you. And the reason is that we're here to see Ian, who's here, who is from Focusrite Novation. And he is going to do a presentation shortly about Focusrite Novation, about the company and about its products. So before I introduce Ian, and he'll start his presentation, I just wanted to say to everybody online and everybody here that this is Middlesbrough College. You're in Studio 1, which is one of 7, or is it 9 studios here at Middlesbrough College. And my name is Kendall Wrightson, and I'm the quality manager for the Department of Visual and Performing Arts, which is the name of this department. And the courses that we run here are University of Teesside courses. And those courses are the Foundation degree and BA Honours degree in Performance and Events Production, and a BSc, Bachelor of Science degree in Music Technology. So I just wanted to let you know that that's what goes on here alongside these events. So I'd now like to introduce Ian from Focusrite. Thank you very much, Ian. Let's give Ian a round of applause.
Yeah, just a quick 10 minutes, just going to take you through the company history. That guy you just saw there was George Martin, who was the Beatles producer. And back in the 80s, he commissioned a chap called Rupert Neve to design the ultimate analog signal path, basically. Everyone heard of Neve as a company, the Neve preamps, so very, very sought after. So this is the ISA 110. This is all about Focusrite's heritage, basically, and the preamps is Focusrite's heritage. That's what we're known for. And the ISA preamps are transformer based. This is an ISA 1 that's on my table here, and I'm not going to use it today, but I just brought it along and I wanted to power it up just so you can all see it in its glory with the VU meter. What the ISA concept is just transformer based solid state preamps that give you a really, really crystal clear sound and don't colour the sound too much. And the whole point of that is so that the producer can then treat the sound after it's been recorded, as opposed to recording with a valve preamp where you're actually colouring the sound and adding, sort of distortion and harmonics on the way in. At that point, once you've recorded, then you can't really take that off. So that's the difference between the sort of valve pre's and the transformer-based preamps that we do. So this is the Forte console that was built in 1988. So that's it was a massive mixing desk. It was in Master Rock Studios in London, and there's one in Electric Lady in New York as well. Very, very expensive desk. Not really the way people work, such as yourselves and myself. The way we work today is very much in the box. Not really getting to use these massive desks that Focusrite started out building. So this is our MD, Phil Dodderidge, and he took over control of the company from Rupert Neve and called it Focusrite Audio Engineering, which is what it is today. And then there were the Studio Series console. So the Studio Series wasn't as expensive to make as the Forte Suite console, and so it's but it still retained that kind of signature sound of Focusrite, that really, really clean sound that Focusrite gives. So then moving on from that, in '93 there was the Red Range. Again, very, very high quality units, very sought after, and you can't even get them anymore. But they're fantastic units, and they were used in recording studios and broadcast studios all across the world. Then this is the ISA range. So this was sort of derived from those desks with loads and loads of channels. And the term channel strip, really, that's what this is. What you can see there is an ISA 430, and that is a channel strip. So what a channel strip is you get your mic preamp at the front, That then goes through to EQ and dynamics, and that's what one channel is on a mixing desk. So if you imagine all these channels on a mixing desk, and you can't afford to have 48 or 64 of them because it's silly money, but what you can do is just take one out, turn it on its side and put it in a rack, and then that's you, and you can do your multi-tracking then, and you can layer up your sounds, and you've got that quality channel strip there. So does anyone know what ISA stands for? There's a t-shirt up for grabs if anyone wants to hazard a guess. No? It stands for Input Signal Amplifier. So it's just straightforward, just does what it says on the tin, You put the signal in, it amplifies it to the highest quality. So what makes the preamp so special? It's the Lundale transformers that we used in the preamps that made the sound so special, and also a Zobel network, which is a type of balanced circuit just to keep the noise floor really, really low, so that you're not inducing any noise onto the signal, and we're keeping a really, really quiet signal on the sound. So this is the ISA range, the ISA 1 at the top. That's the one that you can see on the table now. And then underneath that, you've got the 430 Mark II, which we saw in that picture before. And then there's a 428 and the 828. And they're, instead of it being one ISA preamp, there's 4 in the 428, and then there's 8 in the 828. So these are used in studios all over the world. You see them in lots and lots of professional studios. And then there's digital cards also available for them. So, if you're using a really, really high quality bit of kit like that, and there's the option to use the conversion inside those units, it doesn't really make sense to come out of that high quality bit of kit and then go into a lesser quality preamp. But if you have got a digital input on your interface, then what you can do is you can use the conversion that is being is being processed in the unit, and then go into your interface, and you retain that quality then, because it's just a digital signal. So, we're not adding any noise to the signal chain. Once it's in digital, then it's just ones and zeros. So if you use the converters in the high-end kit and then go into your interface in the digital domain, then you retain the quality. So who uses these things? Adrian Bushby. So he's recorded the Foo Fighters and Muse and bands like that, and he swears by all the ISA stuff. And then there's Kato's a composer for TV, so people using this equipment in television as well and film. And then there's front of house, that's the front of house engineer there for Bryan Adams. So Focusrite gear being used in live sound as well. Then there was a liquid channel. Has anyone heard of the liquid channel before? Yeah? And can anyone tell me what it does? What it does is it emulates classic preamps and compressors from over the years. So what we've got here is a bit of equipment with a totally analog front end. So it's not just a digital bit of kit. We've got a really, really high-class microphone preamp. And then behind the scenes, there's this bit of kit emulates high-end preamps and compressors. So you can choose a combination of whichever preamp and whichever compressor, and they're very, very close to the real thing. Some would say that you can't even tell the difference. If we look at that, that's the kind of thing that you would have seen in studios like Abbey Road, racks and racks of high-end gear. With the liquid channel, you can have all of that, but just in one unit. So it's a really, really clever bit of equipment. These are the reasons that you might just want one bit of kit as opposed to all these. All these rack units take up a lot of space. They're really expensive. You can't really carry a rack unit like that around. It's just far too heavy. And also they can be really rare. If they've stopped being made, then you can't even get them anymore. And then if you use a liquid channel, you can recreate that sound. And these are some of the guys that use the liquid channel. So Guy Sigsworth, Bjork and Madonna, the Spice Girls producer. We've also got Paisley Park, who works with Prince and Herbie Hancock. And then on the next page, there's people like Carl Cox, who, again, he uses 2 liquid channels at the end of his signal chain before he goes into the front of house. And that's what just gives him that edge when he goes on stage and he sounds so much better than everyone else. That's because he's going through 2 liquid channels. So then we've got the Sapphire range. So this is the kind of stuff that people are using in home studios. This is our interface range, and this is what we do. So I'm using a Focusrite Sapphire Pro 24 DSP. There's a couple of boxes over there that you guys can come up and have a look at the end. And really, the key things about these interfaces is what it says there: the performance, the stability, and the affordability. Because we can't all afford thousands of pounds worth of gear to put in our bedrooms. We just can't. What we need is as high a quality as we can get for our money. And we need it to be reliable. So the Sapphire range is the Sapphire 6 USB. That's the sort of entry-level interface. What we haven't done is compromise any quality on that, because we use the same preamps on that as we do on all the rest of the range. So these are not ISA preamps anymore. These are our interface preamps. Going up, we've got the Pro 14, the Pro 24, the Pro 24 DSP, which I can show you why it's called DSP. Another t-shirt question. Does anyone know what DSP stands for? T-shirt. Digital signal processing. So there's a little chip inside this unit, and it actually processes VRM, which I'm going to come on to. So that's the difference. Then we've got the Sapphire Pro 40, which is a 1U rack unit, 8 analog ins. All these interfaces have different features, and they just go up in price. So it's to do with the amount of inputs and outputs you've got, and also whether or not you've got ADAT on it. So ADAT is basically a way of taking 8 more channels of audio over a digital signal. So if you've got an ADAT port input on the back of your interface, what you can actually do is buy an extra rack of preamps. So you wouldn't need to upgrade your interface. All you would need to do is buy an extra 8 preamps with an ADAT out, and then you can route that signal 8 more mics, if you like, into your desktop interface, and then we'd have more like sort of 12 to 14 analog inputs. So if you've already got 8 on something like the Pro 40, and then you get an Octapre, that gives you 16 analog inputs, which is enough to do a decent live recording or studio recording. So these are all the sort of the main points on our interfaces. These are the things that we're proud of as a company. That's what I've just spoken about, expanding your I/O. So you see these little ADAT optical is another way of explaining that. It's an optical input and output. And yeah, just a way of expanding your inputs and outputs on your interface. So this is the 2011 product range, the VRM box, the RedNet range, which is it's basically a recording solution that works over Ethernet. So basically the benefits of that are, if you look at any sort of analog studios, there's going to be multi-core cables, which are huge, expensive cable runs going under the floor, all that kind of stuff. You need to get a building company in to run those kind of cables. This works all over Cat5, which is just an internet cable, just Ethernet. And it's actually a really, really reliable source. So what you do is you come out of your computer into a gigabit switch, and then from that gigabit switch, which is just lots and lots of little tiny Ethernet ports, then you can route these cables all over the studio. If you were using it in the college, you could route these cables into different rooms. You can run them extremely long lengths, and they're very, very reliable. I think they were tested for up to a week without dropping a single sample of data, so they're very reliable. There's the Control 2802, which is a company called Audient actually designed that product, and we took the product and rebranded it, and we're kind of we're pushing that product now as a dual layer control surface and analog mixer as well. So you can use that as a summing mixer or for tracking or for controlling Pro Tools and Logic, etc. And there's the Scarlett range as well, where we've gone back to this red colour that goes back to way back to '93 when the Red series came out. You know, Focusrite was kind of known for that red colour. So that the Scarlett interfaces are very similar to the Sapphire Pros, but they're all USB 2 instead of being FireWire interfaces. So really, that just depends on, you know, what connections you have on your computer, and you know, whichever one you prefer to use. So the VRM box, virtual reference monitoring is the VRM box. So it actually was introduced on the Pro 24 DSP first. And what it allows you to do is, I mean, then after that the box came out. But what it allows you to do is cross-reference your mix through headphones on different models of classic speaker. So the guy that made this is an extremely clever guy, and what he did was he went into 3 different environments. So one was a professional studio, one was a bedroom studio, and one was a living room. And he's collected these 10 classic speaker models for the studio environment, and he's taken the impulse responses. So the way that works is you get a special microphone and you put a special noise through the speakers, and the microphone kind of measures the impulse responses of this speaker and the environment. And then what you end up with is essentially a graph, readings that you can then apply to, you know, to the sound that you're playing through your laptop or your computer. And that recreates the environment and the sound of these speakers. Because if you do a mix on, say for example, your VXT4s, and you get it sounding great, and it sounds fantastic on those speakers, and then you take it and listen to it on something else, a different pair of speakers, and then there's too much bass, or you can't hear the bass, or there's problems. And that's to do with the fact that every different pair of monitors and every different environment makes things sound differently. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to cross-reference your mix so that your mix sounds good on everything. And this is what this technology allows you to do. So here's some of the speakers that are included. There's KRKs, which is the model of speaker, the brand of speaker that we distribute in the UK. You can listen to it on things like flat screen TVs in the living room. So guys that design music for games and film like to check their mix through that kind of a system. There's hi-fi systems, and then there's other speaker models like the Yamaha NS10, which is a really well-known speaker for, you know, mixing down vocals on. You've got Quested speakers, which are also really nice. So you can just hear what your mix would sound like on these different pairs of speakers. So we would recommend that you're going to get the better quality your headphones are, the more you're going to get out of VRM. So the flatter response your headphones are, then the more you're going to get out of this box. And I would never say that you should only mix on headphones. You should always mix on speakers, and you should always test your mix, you know, on a pair of loudspeakers, on PA systems, in your car, etc. People have been asking if we're going to update this to do it in your car setting. So maybe that's around the corner, I don't know. This is the Scarlett range, which I've spoken about. It gets bundled with the Scarlett plugins, Scarlett plugin suite. And this is just showing you the various sort of connections and inputs that you can do. So as we go on, you realise that there's actually quite a lot you can connect to these units, and they're portable as well. That's showing you there the Octapre Mark II Dynamic, which is 8 mic pre's with a compressor on every channel, just with one optical cable routed into this 18i6. Then would give you, well, it would give you 10 preamps that you could supply phantom power to the microphones from, and then you've got a few more line inputs as well. And this is the latest addition to the interface range. It's the Scarlett 2i2. So this is a really nice looking little box, just for your kind of home recording, 2 inputs, 2 outputs. Simple as. Doesn't really get much more straightforward than that. And there's a Midnight plugin suite. So the Midnight plugin suite is incredible value. They sound fantastic. and they're modelled on the ISA 110 EQ and the 130 compressor. So that's what is included in the Midnight plugin suite. You get an EQ and a compressor, and they do sound fantastic. Well worth trying the demo out. That was the Control 2802. And I'm not going to go into too much detail about that now. I've explained that it allows you to control your DAW, and it also has cracking preamps and works as a summing mixer as well. So it's a pretty hefty bit of kit. If you're looking at the back there, there's a lot of things you can do with that. So what I'm going to do now is, now I've explained the Focusrite history to you, I'm going to come out of here and explain a little bit about automap technology. So automap it's on number 4 now. It's on version 4, and it's come on a long way since it was invented. And the reason it was invented was because back in the day, when soft synths came on the market, or hardware synths, in order to control parameters in your software, you'd need to go and find out which message controls that parameter. So for example, if you get the Novation V Station, you need to get the instruction booklet, look at, say you wanted to control the filter cutoff, excuse me, and then you'd have to find out which control change message controls that parameter. And then you'd have to go about programming your unit, something like the 0SL here, although this wasn't out in these days, but you'd have to program this up to send out a specific message on a specific channel. So if you had to do that for a whole plugin, it's quite a laborious, time-consuming process to map out a soft synth in order to control it. So automap was invented so that it took this whole process away and it just did it for you. So the way it works is you open up the software and it scans all your external plugins, all your third-party plugins, right? And then you get an option to tick the boxes for the ones that you want to use with automap. And then when you go into your software, if I go into my plugin folder here, I could look down the list and I can see here Toroverb, for example, is I've ticked the box for that. So what happens is it creates a duplicate version of the plugin and calls it Toroverb Automap. So that's pretty straightforward. So it's obvious which one I need to open for automap to see it. So if I double click Toroverb, up pops the plugin. And then I can hit view on my controller, because the way automap works is once you've mastered the concept, then you can apply that to any of the Novation hardware. So if we hit view, then we get the automap graphic interface on the screen. So at the moment, this is in user mode, which is, as I was explaining before, it's sending standard MIDI messages into the software. So this is just control change and note messages. But I've also got groups on this controller called Effects, Instrument, and Mixer. So if I go to my Effects group, it can see Toroverb, because Toroverb's a reverb effect. So now if I move these parameters, you can see that that's controlling the early reflections in the top left corner of the Toroverb plugin. So instantly, I haven't had to do anything. Automap's just mapped out this plugin for me and put it on the controls of my hardware. Not only that, but I'm also getting LED feedback on the controller. So if I was performing on stage, when I turn these pots, I can see at which value all my parameters are at. And that's really useful if you're in a dark DJ booth, so that you don't have to keep looking at your computer screen. So it doesn't stop there, because if I was to open another effect plugin, let's open a different one. So this is Camel Fat. So I've opened up Camel Fat. Now the reason it took me straight to that map was because Toroverb was the only effect that was open in my session. But now if I hit the effects group, it's given me an overview of the group. So it shows me that Toroverb is in there and also that Camel Fat's there as well. And again, on the hardware, you can see the resemblance. It's a little bit difficult to see on the overhead projector right now, but I can see I've got two plugins there on my controller because they're lit up. if I was to open another one, let's open another version of Camel Fat, and I've got another light on my controller. So what that means is I can select which plugin I want to use simply by touching an encoder, because they're all touch sense encoders. So if I wanted to control Reverb again, I just touch the knob that it corresponds to, and I'm into that map now, and I'm controlling that effect. So it's not just instant mappings, but it's also a navigation system for all your effects and for all your plugins. Now, some of you might be thinking, well, I don't need all that control, I don't need that many controls, but you still might want a few. So what you can do is, let's open the plugin, and this is too much control for me. I only want to control the dry and wet of this effect. So what I'll do is I can click clear in auto map, and then there's a button on the hardware called learn. So I can hit learn. The top bar of the automap GUI goes red to tell me that I'm in learn mode, and then I can just move a parameter on the plugin. So I'm going to just move this dry and wet effects, and then move a control on the nocturne, and instantly it's been mapped. So you know that's it's just like having a learn function within the software that you're using, such as the MIDI learn function within Ableton, except this allows you to just quickly map out and create custom mappings for all your plugins that you use. If I wanted to do a few more, I can just repeat the process to control the pre-delay, and let's do the wet gain as well. So I've got all those now, and if I wanted to save that as my default mapping, then I could just hit set as default, and every time I bring up that plugin, it brings up the map that I saved. So it's a really useful system. Now that's the Nocturne, £69. Really, really useful. A lot of people think that it's just 8 rotaries and 8 buttons, but there's a lot more to it than meets the eye. And then if we connect up the Zero, as I said before, it's exactly the same principle, except on here, there's so many more controls readily available on the hardware. So if I hit View now, you can see the difference. There's a lot more controls ready to map there. The other bonus is that there's an LCD screen on here. Now the benefit of that is, let's go back to my effects group. I don't really need to have that view up, because now I'm in my effects group, I can see I've got all my plugins on my LCD screen. So I can see what was on the GUI, but it's on the LCD screen. So I can select the plugins, and then I've got all the parameters names there as well. So I'm much less reliant on that graphic interface. And then we've got a really sort of comprehensive MIDI interface as well. So if any of you guys use hardware synths when you're making music, you can send different MIDI messages to different hardware synths. And also just the amount of controls on the hardware is a real big benefit there. And if the special thing is, how many guys here use Logic? Can I have a quick show of hands for all you Logic users? Okay, cool. Not as many as in other parts of England, but it's really useful for Logic, because it sees all of the Logic's native plugins, all the stuff you get with Logic. It just sees them straight away. You don't need to go through the process of ticking a box to choose the plugins that you use. You just open up a plugin and bang, it works. You've got all your mixer control. So yeah, now the first half that I've just spoken about, auto map and Focusrite, I'm going to just cut by 10 minutes, because I'd like to have a little bit longer in the second half. 45 minutes is just a little bit tight. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to take a break in 2 seconds. But before we do that, I'm aware that we've got an online audience, and I'm just going to check to see if there are any questions from online. Is there anything coming up there, guys? Anyone asking any questions?
Not yet, but
I must have done a half decent job then. Yeah. I say that now, and now there's going to be a flood of intense questions for me. What about you guys? Is there anything you'd like to ask on any of the stuff that I've spoken about in this first half?
On the Zero SL.
Yeah.
The LCD feedback.
Yeah.
Does that can that give you feedback from any plugin, or is it only ones that are compatible with AutoMap?
The LED feedback works as part of Automap. And also the other side to that is if the DAW that you're using provides LED feedback. So there's two sides to that, because there's multiple templates on here. Okay. Yeah. If I go to all my templates, if I come out of Automap mode, which is just one mode on a controller, and then I press templates, I can see templates on here for classic hardware synths like the JV1080 by Roland, and there's a Virus, there's the Supernova, which is a classic Novation synth. There's also templates for Reason and Ableton. Now, if I was to select the Ableton template, what that is a control surface. So the difference between standard MIDI controlling and a control surface is that with a control surface, you don't have to assign anything. You select the 0 SL within Ableton, and then everything just works. And Ableton provides LED feedback to the controller. So that's the side of it where Ableton has implemented a control surface that provides LED feedback. But then there's always Automap. So if you're using Automap at all, there will always be LED feedback.
Could you manually set those settings as well?
Say, for example, I wanted to control something within Ableton, and I wanted to get LED feedback on my controls. What I would do is I'd use Automap. Okay, so that's different from using a standard MIDI template. So go to Automap mode, and I'm not going to be controlling any third-party effects or instruments here. So what I'm going to do is go to my user group, which is the one that I showed you first. And this is, instead of plugins now, this is 3 MIDI channels. Okay, so you've got 16 channels in MIDI, and you've got 127 CC messages in each channel. So if I had any more t-shirts to say, can anyone tell me what 16 times 127 is? But even I don't know that. But if we, the way this is useful is, I've renamed 2 of those channels filters and delays. So if I know that I want to control my filters, I can touch this encoder, and now I could assign all these controls to different filters in my software. And because I'm using Automap to do that, I'd get LED feedback. Yeah. Right. So you can see now, because I'm on an Automap template, I'm not using the Automap plugins as such. I'm using Automap send standard MIDI messages into my software. So because of that reason, I'm going to get LED feedback on any assignments that I make.
Theoretically, if I were to get, say, guitar software,
yep,
I could use a different sort of one of those pages for each part of the software and say, that's my reverbs, that's my my amp settings, and you could set those
precisely. I mean, if you had something like this, you may not even need to use different channels. You might just want to use the top encoders for your reverb settings, the bottom encoders for your EQ settings, I don't know. But if you were using Automap and the user group, you'd get all your LED feedback. And it's useful, but for me in the studio, it's not as much of a big deal. But if you're a live performance,
yeah, it was for live context.
If it's for live performance, yeah, it's priceless. Yeah, it's really, really useful. So anything that you use Automap for, you're going to get feedback.
There's a couple of questions online.
Cool.
Mind is interjecting.
I'll come straight back to you. All right. I'll come straight back to you.
You've been waiting very patiently.
Yeah. When is the RedNet stuff available? With RedNet, we're working hard to get everything really, really, really stable and really right, because it's very important for us, for our customers, to be satisfied with the products. So RedNet's been launched, and people know that it's coming out, but in terms of exactly pinpointing when it's going to be available, that's to be confirmed.
How many controllers can I use at the same time on a PC?
It depends on a few things. The main thing is probably bandwidth, because every device is going to use up different amounts of bandwidth and different amounts of power. So, and it also depends on whether your machine has one USB bus or 2 USB buses. For example, on this Mac laptop, there's 2 USB ports, but there's only 1 USB bus. So even though I've got 2 ports, these 2 devices are still sharing the same bus. So it all very much depends on you know, how much bandwidth you're sending through the USB ports and how many USB buses you might have, whether it's a desktop or a laptop. So it's a difficult one to answer, but usually if you use a powered hub, that can also help, because power can become an issue as well. So I'd recommend looking into which powered hubs are recommended to be used with your products, and just sort of not going out and buying 6 controllers straight away, and just kind of building it up gradually and just finding out what works best for you, because it can vary quite a lot.
Is the RedNet stuff available now to purchase?
It's not available to purchase yet.
When will it be available?
This is what I'm saying, it's to be confirmed at the moment. Yeah. You had a question?
So,
Yeah, how much is the Novation 0SL?
I believe it's $199 to buy in the shops to any sort of member of public that goes into a store. So it's a very competitive price. I'm not sure what the ins and outs are with education pricing, but I do know that if you are studying, you're entitled to certain discounts. But again, I can find out more details on all of that at a later date if you take my email. Any more over there? Any more over here? Everyone happy, yeah? Right, well, thanks for listening to the first half. If you come back after, we'll have a little break, and then we'll look at Ableton, and we'll sort of start to use some of these controllers. Cheers, guys. See you in a bit.
thank you very much.